Hey guys, Avi here, and welcome back to our brand new series, creating our first iOS application, Bullseye. Now, creating iOS apps and coding Swift, those two might sound completely different, but honestly, once you've learned how to code in Swift, creating iOS applications isn't too hard. It's just throwing on UI elements and writing the code behind that. So let's get started. Now, first thing first, go ahead and open up your Xcode, hopefully it's version 9 or higher, and create a new Xcode project, okay? Now, while creating a new Xcode project is going to show us a bunch of different applications. The app that we want is single view app, and for most of the apps in the series, we'll just be creating a single view application. Hit next. Now, the next thing it's going to say is, what is your product name? What are we making? We're making Bullseye. So go ahead and say Bullseye. Team name. Now, if you do have a developer account, guys, go ahead and select your developer account. If you don't, just hit none. It's okay. It's not needed for now. Your organization name. So if you do have a website or if you have a company, go ahead and state that company or name over here. Otherwise, your first name is absolutely fine. And then your identifier is going to be what is your website URL. So if it's maybe thecodex.com, maybe it's programmingforlife.com, whatever your URL is, if you don't have one, just say com dot and then your first name. So it's basically your URL flipped. Then your language should be Swift, and then go ahead and ignore the last part over here and hit next. Now it's going to ask you, where do you want to save this? So I'm going to go ahead and save it in my code directory, hit create, and now we've created our first Bullseye project. Fantastic. Now, when you're creating Xcode apps, we're just creating iOS apps in general, Xcode uses something known as MVC. It's called the Model View Controller approach, and since iOS 8, or I think since the very beginning, Xcode has used this Model View Controller approach to make its iOS applications. So what does that mean? So the Model View Controller stands for, again, models, views, and controllers. Your models are your structures. So when we learned about enums, when we learned about structs, when we learned about classes, that's where your models are. You know, they're the hierarchy, or they're that blueprint for how your data is going to look like. Your views are what the user sees. So if you go to your main.storyboard file, your main.storyboard file has all the views that your user is going to see. So this view over here, I can drag and drop elements onto my screen. That's what the user is going to see. That's my view. And last but not least, my controller. My controller file is where all my code goes with user interaction. Let's say a user tapped a button. Let's say a user hit a switch. Let's say the user entered some text in a text field. No matter what the user interaction is, you can write the code to perform an action in your controller file. So that's Model View Controller in a nutshell, and that's how we're going to make all of our iOS applications. So what I want to do is, just to end off this lecture really simply, I'm going to go ahead and in my main.storyboard, on the right hand side, if you don't see this right hand side, go ahead and click this right button over here. This opens up the right hand pane view. And at the bottom over here, we have these 4 buttons. These 4 buttons allow us to create code quickly, to create structures quickly. And the third button allows us to add objects to our view. So we're going to go ahead and search for a label. Go ahead and drag and drop this label onto our screen and center it. So let's center it. I'm going to go ahead and make this a bit bigger. And then I'm going to go ahead and center the text. Now, to get this view, make sure you're selected the caret view. This is called the attribute inspector. Go ahead and call this hello world. Fantastic. And then I'm going to go ahead and center the text, save this, and run it. So this honestly could be an iOS application, guys. It's that straightforward. It's that simple. You add objects to your view, and then you run your code. So here is my simulator. Again, with Xcode 9, the simulator now looks like an actual iPhone, so that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and give it a few seconds to run. It definitely takes a few seconds for it to load the entire application. And let's give it a few more seconds over here. Fantastic. Hello world. So that's it, guys. That was creating our very first application. And now in the next few lectures, we'll go ahead and understand how to actually add different elements, add the code behind it, and get a fully functioning Bullseye application working. I'll see you in the next video.